My brothers and sisters, we live in a time where people are constantly asking for more money, asking for more opportunities, asking for instant results. Yet very few people pause to reflect on how they are asking and who they are truly relying upon. Islam teaches us something deeply powerful because, vision is not unlocked by desperation. It is unlocked by connection. Allah reminds us that He is our Razak, the ultimate provider, not your employer, not the market, not your qualifications. Those are only tools. Allah is the source. Now let us talk about Fajr. Fajr is not just a prayer. It is a declaration of discipline. It is proof that you prioritize Allah before the world wakes up. And the moments after Fajr are moments of clarity when the heart is soft, the mind is focused, and distractions are minimal. This is why the righteous guarded this time carefully. This time carefully. Instead of constantly asking, begging, and worrying, Islam teaches us to remember. That one short, meaningful remembrance repeated 7 times after Fajr can reshape your mindset, strengthen your trust, and invite barakah into your efforts. Why 7? Because repetition builds consciousness, because consistency builds sincerity, and sincerity attracts divine assistance. But let us be very clear and very honest. This is not magic. This is not a shortcut to instant money. This is spiritual alignment. When you stop obsessively asking and start consciously remembering, your gratitude increases, your anxiety decreases, your decisions become wiser, your efforts become more focused. And when your heart is aligned, your actions improve. When your actions improve, your results change. And when Allah places barakah in your work, little becomes much. Yet, abundant wealth does not always arrive as a sudden windfall. Sometimes it arrives as a contentment with what you have, opportunities you didn't expect, protection from loss, peace that money alone cannot buy. So stop asking and panic. Instead, remember Allah with certainty, work with excellence, trust His timing, accept His wisdom. Because the one who relies on Allah never walks alone. And the one who remembers Him consistently is never truly deprived. May Allah place barakah in our time, our efforts, and our provision. Ameen. Correct understanding of rizq is foundational to Islamic belief. Yet, it is often misunderstood in practical life. Rizq is not limited to money, salary, or material possessions. Rather, it encompasses everything Allah grants a person that benefits them: wealth, health, knowledge, peace of mind, opportunities, relationships, and even protection from harm. When Allah declares Himself our Razak, it establishes a theological truth that provision originates solely from Him. Human beings do not create provision, they merely receive it through means Allah allows to function. This distinction is critical because confusing the means with the source leads to anxiety, arrogance, or despair. A person may believe their intelligence, profession, or network sustains them, but Islam teaches that these are instruments, not guarantees. When Allah withholds barakah, abundance can vanish despite effort. When He places barakah, limited resources can suffice beyond expectation. Islam does not promote passivity in understanding rizq. Effort is obligatory, but reliance must remain firmly anchored in Allah. This balance prevents 2 extremes: laziness disguised as trust, and obsession disguised as hard work. A believer works diligently while knowing that effort alone does not compel results. This mindset transforms the relationship with work and wealth. Success no longer inflates the ego because it is seen as a gift. Failure no longer crushes the soul because it is understood as part of divine wisdom. When rizq is correctly understood, envy decreases, competition becomes ethical, and gratitude becomes habitual. One no longer measures success by comparing possessions with others, but by recognizing personal blessings and responsibilities. Another critical aspect of rizq is that it is allocated with precision and wisdom, not randomness. The Quranic narrative consistently emphasizes that Allah gives provision in measured amounts, expanding it for some and restricting it for others, not as a sign of love or rejection, but as a test. Wealth is not inherently honor, nor is limitation humiliation. For one person, abundance may lead to generosity and gratitude. For another, it may lead to arrogance and heedlessness. Similarly, restriction may cultivate patience and closeness to Allah in one individual, while another may fall into resentment. Understanding this protects a believer from making spiritual judgments based on material conditions. A person struggling financially is not spiritually inferior, nor is a wealthy individual automatically favored. Rizq is a responsibility before it is a privilege. The misconception that constant verbal asking alone increases provision often weakens spiritual discipline. While dua is essential and encouraged, rizq is not always delivered in the form requested. A person may ask for wealth and receive protection from debt instead. Another may seek financial increase and receive clarity that leads to wiser decisions, indirectly improving their situation. Sometimes rizq comes as restraint, preventing a person from entering a path that would have harmed their faith or character. This reframing is essential for spiritual maturity. When believers expect provision only in one form, disappointment grows. When they understand rizq as multidimensional, gratitude expands. Even unanswered requests can be a form of provision when they preserve faith, dignity, or long-term well-being. Understanding rizq correctly also instills responsibility. Since provision is from Allah, it must be earned lawfully, used ethically, and shared compassionately. Wealth acquired without integrity lacks barakah, regardless of its amount. Islam does not separate spirituality from economics. Rather, it integrates belief into daily transactions. A believer who understands rizq avoids exploitation, dishonesty, and greed because they trust that no unlawful gain can increase what Allah has not decreed. This belief liberates a person from fear-based decisions and allows them to operate with principle and patience. Ultimately, correct understanding of rizq reshapes the inner world before altering the external one. It produces calm instead of panic, gratitude instead of entitlement, effort without obsession, and trust without neglect. When this understanding settles in the heart, the believer's relationship with wealth becomes healthy, balanced, and spiritually grounded. The time after Fajr holds a unique spiritual weight in Islam because it marks the beginning of the day with consciousness of Allah before worldly distractions take control. This period is not merely an extension of the prayer, but a continuation of spiritual presence. The early hours are characterized by stillness, clarity, and sincerity, making them especially suitable for remembrance, zikr, reflection, and intention setting. Islam places immense value on beginnings, and the beginning of the day shapes the direction of what follows. When a believer anchors the day in remembrance after Fajr, it establishes a spiritual framework that influences decisions, behavior, and emotional stability throughout the day. A consistency in remembrance after Fajr is more transformative than sporadic acts of worship driven by emotion. Regular zikr trains the heart to remain aware of Allah beyond the prayer mat. Repeating a short remembrance daily cultivates discipline, which is a central component of spiritual growth. Discipline is what converts belief into practice and sincerity into action. Over time, this consistency nurtures a deep sense of reliance on Allah, reducing impulsive reactions to stress, financial concerns, or uncertainty. A person who begins each day remembering Allah develops inner order, which naturally reflects in outward productivity and focus. The educational wisdom behind emphasizing the post-Fajr period lies in its psychological and physiological alignment with spiritual receptivity. At this time, the mind is less cluttered, the ego is quieter, and intentions are purer. This makes remembrance more impactful, not because of its length, but because of its presence. Even a brief act of zikr during this period can surpass lengthy worship performed with distraction later in the day. The early hours foster mindfulness, allowing the believer to internalize meanings rather than recite mechanically. This mindful remembrance strengthens emotional resilience and builds patience, both of which are essential for navigating challenges related to provision and life responsibilities. Another dimension of post-Fajr remembrance is its role in cultivating gratitude. When a person acknowledges Allah at the start of the day, they become aware that waking up itself is a blessing. Gratitude is not merely a moral virtue, but a spiritual mechanism that increases barakah. A grateful heart recognizes blessings even in small forms, preventing constant dissatisfaction. This state of contentment does not reduce ambition, rather it purifies it. A believer who practices gratitude after Fajr pursues goals with balance, avoiding desperation and entitlement. This emotional equilibrium allows for clearer judgment and healthier relationships with work, wealth, and people. The repetition of remembrance during this time is particularly significant. Repetition is a pedagogical tool that reinforces awareness and intention. By repeating zikr consistently after Fajr, the believer conditions the heart to associate success and security with Allah rather than external factors. Over time, this association weakens attachment to outcomes and strengthens trust in divine wisdom. When trust increases, anxiety decreases. Reduced anxiety leads to better decision-making, ethical conduct, and perseverance qualities that indirectly contribute to long-term success and stability. Post-Fajr remembrance also aligns with prophetic encouragement regarding productivity and blessing in early hours. Islam emphasizes utilizing this time rather than returning to heedlessness or sleep. The habit of remaining engaged in zikr after Fajr creates momentum for purposeful action. It encourages planning, reflection, and intentional living. A person who begins their day with remembrance is more likely to manage time effectively, approach responsibilities with sincerity, and maintain moral discipline. These traits, though spiritual in origin, have tangible effects on personal and professional growth. The impact of consistent remembrance after Fajr extends beyond individual spirituality into social and ethical behavior. A heart softened by zikr is less reactive, more forgiving, and more conscious of accountability. This awareness influences interactions with others, promoting honesty, patience, and compassion. In financial matters, such consciousness discourages unethical shortcuts and fosters trustworthiness. Barakah is often experienced not through sudden increases, but through stability, protection from loss, and meaningful progress. When remembrance becomes habitual at the start of each day, it subtly restructures priorities, aligning worldly pursuits with spiritual values. Engaging in zikr after Fajr also serves as a daily reaffirmation of purpose. It reminds the believer that success is not solely measured by material accumulation, but by alignment with divine guidance. This reminder acts as a compass throughout the day, helping one navigate challenges without compromising faith or integrity. Over time, the cumulative effect of this practice becomes evident in emotional strength, clarity of direction, and a deeper sense of fulfillment. Replacing complaints with conscious supplication is a profound shift in spiritual attitude. That reshapes a believer's relationship with Allah and with life itself. Complaining often emerges from frustration, fear, or a sense of entitlement, and while expressing hardship is human, habitual complaining hardens the heart and weakens trust. Islam does not discourage acknowledging pain or difficulty. Rather, it guides believers toward directing their concerns to Allah with humility and awareness. Conscious supplication dua is not merely verbal asking, but a state of inner presence in which the heart recognizes Allah's wisdom, timing, mercy, even while seeking relief. Frequent complaining, especially when voiced without reflection, conditions the mind to focus on scarcity rather than blessing. Over time, this mindset distorts perception, making problems appear larger and blessings invisible. A believer may possess countless favors yet remain emotionally impoverished due to constant dissatisfaction. Conscious supplication reverses this pattern by requiring the supplicant to pause, reflect, and acknowledge Allah before articulating needs. This pause is educational in nature. It trains emotional regulation, patience, and self-awareness. Instead of reacting impulsively, the believer responds intentionally, transforming anxiety into trust and restlessness into composure. The distinction between complaining and supplicating lies in direction and intention. Complaints are often broadcast horizontally to people, circumstances, or oneself, while supplication is directed vertically to Allah. When hardship is repeatedly shared without purpose, it reinforces helplessness. When hardship is presented to Allah with awareness, it strengthens reliance. This redirection does not eliminate struggle, but reframes it as meaningful and temporary. Conscious supplication recognizes that Allah already knows one's condition. Therefore, dua becomes an act of connection rather than information. This understanding elevates the spiritual quality of asking and deepens sincerity. Another critical element of conscious supplication is balance. Islam teaches believers to ask with hope while maintaining acceptance. This balance prevents emotional extremes, desperation on one side and resignation on the other. When a person complains excessively, it often reflects an expectation that life must conform immediately to personal desires. Conscious supplication acknowledges desire without demanding outcomes. It teaches patience during delay and gratitude during ease. Over time, this balanced approach nurtures emotional resilience, allowing the believer to remain grounded regardless of circumstances. Replacing complaints with supplication also strengthens contentment, which is not passive acceptance, but active trust. Contentment emerges when a believer internalizes that Allah's choices are rooted in wisdom beyond human perception. This does not negate effort or aspiration, rather it refines them. A content heart strives without resentment and waits without bitterness. Such a heart is less vulnerable to comparison, envy, and despair. When contentment grows, emotional energy previously spent on complaining is redirected toward constructive action and meaningful worship. The educational value of this shift is evident in how it reforms behavior. A person accustomed to complaining often seeks validation from others, creating dependency on external reassurance. Conscious supplication fosters independence from people and dependence on Allah. This independence builds dignity and inner strength. It also improves interpersonal relationships as the believer becomes less burdensome, more patient, and more understanding. When individuals stop projecting dissatisfaction outward, they create environments of calm and cooperation rather than tension and negativity. In the context of provision and life challenges, conscious supplication prevents spiritual burnout. Constant asking without inner reform can lead to disappointment and doubt when outcomes differ from expectations. Conscious supplication, however, integrates trust, remembrance, and acceptance. It teaches the believer to seek what is beneficial, to ask with humility, and to remain open to outcomes that may differ from personal assumptions. This openness allows for growth, learning, and unexpected forms of blessing. Replacing complaints with conscious supplication also cultivates gratitude, as dua in Islam is traditionally framed by praise and acknowledgement before requesting. This structure is intentional and educational. It reminds the believer of Allah's past favors, reinforcing hope and confidence. Gratitude softens the heart, making it receptive to guidance and patient with delay. A grateful supplicant is less likely to interpret hardship as abandonment and more likely to see it as a phase within a larger divine plan. Ultimately, this transformation reshapes the inner dialogue of the believer. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the heart learns to ask, "What is Allah teaching me through this?" This shift fosters maturity, self-awareness, and spiritual depth. By replacing complaints with conscious supplication, the believer develops a stable emotional foundation rooted in trust, awareness, and reliance on Allah. Abundance in Islam is a comprehensive concept that extends far beyond numerical wealth or visible assets. While financial stability is a blessing, it represents only one dimension of what it means to live a rich and fulfilled life. When abundance is restricted to money alone, individuals become vulnerable to constant dissatisfaction, comparison, and fear of loss. Islamic teachings redirect attention toward a broader understanding of abundance that includes inner peace, emotional stability, meaningful relationships, physical well-being, clarity of purpose, and divine protection. These forms of abundance often go unnoticed, yet they are essential for a life of balance and sustainability. Peace of heart is one of the most significant forms of abundance, as it directly affects how a person experiences every other blessing. A person with modest financial means but inner tranquility often lives with greater satisfaction than someone wealthy yet plagued by anxiety. This peace is cultivated through remembrance of Allah, trust in His decree, and acceptance of life's fluctuations. Without peace, wealth amplifies worry rather than comfort. With peace, even limited resources feel sufficient. This internal abundance enables a believer to face uncertainty with calm and to navigate challenges without emotional collapse. Barakah is another central dimension of abundance that cannot be measured by quantity alone. Barakah refers to divine increase in benefit, impact, and longevity. A small income accompanied by barakah may cover needs, foster generosity, and prevent harm, while a large income without barakah may disappear through unforeseen expenses, conflict, or dissatisfaction. Barakah manifests in time, health, relationships, and effort. A day filled with barakah allows a person to accomplish meaningful tasks without exhaustion. Understanding abundance through barakah teaches believers to prioritize quality over quantity and alignment over accumulation. Purpose is a form of abundance that gives direction and meaning to effort. A person who understands why they work, strive, and endure hardship possesses a wealth that cannot be depleted by external circumstances. Purpose anchors ambition in values rather than ego. When financial success is pursued without purpose, it often leads to emptiness even when goals are achieved. When pursued with purpose, wealth becomes a tool for service, responsibility, and growth. This sense of purpose sustains motivation during setbacks and prevents arrogance during success. Emotional and relational abundance plays a vital role in overall well-being. Supportive relationships, trust, and mutual respect enrich life in ways money cannot replicate. A believer surrounded by sincere companionship experiences security, encouragement, and belonging. These relationships are nurtured through patience, honesty, and compassion qualities strengthened by spiritual awareness. Financial abundance without relational abundance often results in isolation. Islam emphasizes family ties, community responsibility, and kindness, recognizing them as essential components of a fulfilled life. Protection from harm is a subtle yet powerful form of abundance that, being spared from accidents, moral downfall, destructive habits, or harmful relationships, is a blessing often realized only in hindsight. Many people equate abundance with acquiring more, yet Islam teaches that being shielded from what harms faith, character, or future is a form of divine generosity. This protection may come through delays, obstacles, or unanswered desires, which initially appear as deprivation, but later reveal themselves as mercy. Contentment is an internal abundance that stabilizes the heart regardless of external conditions. Contentment does not negate ambition or effort. Rather, it regulates desire. A content person seeks improvement without resentment and accepts outcomes without despair. This state prevents the endless cycle of wanting that leaves many emotionally exhausted despite material comfort. Contentment allows individuals to enjoy what they have while striving responsibly for what they lack. Knowledge and clarity are also forms of abundance that shape decision-making and long-term success. Understanding priorities, values, and consequences empowers individuals to navigate life wisely. Knowledge protects from impulsive choices and short-term thinking. A person rich in understanding may avoid losses that wealth cannot repair. Clarity of thought, combined with ethical awareness, leads to sustainable growth and personal integrity. When abundance is understood holistically, wealth is no longer the sole indicator of success. Instead, it becomes one element within a larger framework of well-being and responsibility. This perspective reduces fear of loss, softens attachment to outcomes, and deepens gratitude for both visible and unseen blessings. It also encourages generosity, as those who recognize multiple forms of abundance are more willing to share material wealth without insecurity.